Hey, welcome back to Nexion Analytics, y'all. So today we're going to talk about CSS and how it can be beneficial for you to learn it and how it's the key to all front-end design for web applications. All right, so before we actually jump in, I just want to give a quick history on CSS, right? So CSS was originally designed in 1996 by W3C. And the reason it was designed is because there wasn't much capability when it came to providing greater features within web design. Before, it was very simplistic. It was ran on HTML. But once CSS came in, you're able to have more coloration, design, and dynamic activity within your web design. So think about a time when you grew up and you looked at web designs, looked at websites, you're like, hey, this is kind of simplistic, it's kind of boring, right? And that's not a fault to them. That's just the tools that they had at that time, right? But now we fast forward, we have companies like Netflix, Amazon, Google, Meta, all these different companies are actually using CSS, they're using TypeScript, and they're actually employing this so that they can have better web design capabilities because it allows you to have greater interactivity with the customer, the user, and at the end of the day, a better website is going to attract a wider audience. But with CSS, you have Flexbox variables and over 500 different properties, even up to an infinite amount of combinations on what you can really do to customize your suite. So if you're looking online, you're scrolling and you're seeing all these different web designs, that's what CSS is really able to do for you, combined with JavaScript, combined with TypeScript as well, which is really the holy trinity of front-end design. But with that said, let's dive into the slides and I'll show you exactly what I'm talking about. So as I mentioned it already, CSS can allow you to have so much flavor when it comes to designing your web page. HTML, if you're not familiar with the HTML, just kind of give you the skeleton to roll CSS into it so that you can then provide all your different types of functions and variables within it, but HTML is not going to really allow you to have that design capability. So think of CSS as like the flair that you can add to your web design, whether it's motions, fonts, or placement of a card. CSS has that ability. All right, so the anatomy in CSS is broken out into three different parts. We have selector, we have property, and we have value. So the selector chooses what you're going to style, the property defines what you're changing, and then the value is going to allow you to change exactly how you want it to be changed. So this is just a simple syntax here. So we have heading 1. So here on the right hand side, we have the first syntax that we're looking at, right? So the selector is going to be H1. So what are we talking to, right? That's going to group everything within that relationship. We have the color. So the color is going to be the property that we're looking at now. So what do we actually want to do with the property? Do we want to change it? And what do we want to change it to? And if we don't want to change it, we don't even have to put anything, right? It'll just be that default state. But the color here we're doing is going to be a specific color. So this can be the green for my company. So that's the exact RGB code. And then we have font size as well for the specific type of size that we want for the font. So in the most simplest terms, this is what a syntax looks like in CSS. All right, so now we're going to go even deeper with the anatomy of CSS. So we have element, class, and ID selector. So now we're defining the exact selector, right? And these are going to be HTML tags. We have P, we have H1, we have division, things like that, right? Those are going to be different ways on how things are be structured within the hierarchy of CSS, and I'll show you exactly what that looks like later. Classes, we have reusable blocks of code. So for example, this one's gonna be a button, so we can take this and always use it and reference it whenever we want. And then ID selectors are gonna be targeting a unique single element. So if you wanna use it, you can in that manner. But more often than not, you're probably gonna use class selectors simply because you're going to maintain formats as you build a website, whether it's a font style or it's a background or a card construct. You're going to be using those class selectors repeatedly over and over. So if I was to relate it to something, think of Amazon, right? Think of Amazon, how they have different structures when you're going through the app and you're just scrolling and you see different items. Those are all technically kind of cards, right? So you can see everything in a manner to where you can see all those different blocks set up in the exact same format repeatedly over and over. All right, for colors and units within CSS, you can define it in three different ways. So one, you have the hex codes. You can put the 6-digit code. You can also put the RGB code if you know the RGB code. And then naming is going to be simple colors, right? It's not going to be the entire array of the color playbook. It's just going to be some limited option that you have. So the best thing is to do is probably put that hex code or that RGB code. You also have sizing units, right? So you can put PX, so that can be your pixel size for the actual dimension that you want for that size of your font. You can put rem as well, that's relative to the font size. And then you can put percentage to the parent container. So if the size of where it's sitting, where that item is now living within that container, so you can say, hey, make it this percentage of this entire container. Probably doesn't make sense yet, and that's okay. And we're actually going to go into CSS and start coding all this stuff out later down the road, but this is just going to be an introductory video on CSS. All right, so this is another format on typography, right? So we have font family. We have 10 different types of font families within CSS. It doesn't mean that you're only restricted to these 10, right? You can do so much more with it as well, because you can bring in the font weight, you can bring in italicized formats, different types of things so that you can just make the font more pleasing to your style that you want. You also have the line height, so you can separate the font and you can have more space between it. You have text align too, which allows you to center the font to a specific container. And the reason I'm mentioning this is because text is so huge when it comes to web design, right? You want to have text that's bright, that's bold, and supporting text as well throughout your entire web design. So getting that right format down is key. Okay, so when you're building out a block of code in CSS, let's just say we go back to H1 and we had our text that we wanted to insert for the format, right? Doesn't necessarily mean that we're writing the exact text in CSS. We're not just saying, hey, I want these words listed in this text box. You're not doing that in CSS. You're doing that in TypeScript, doing that in HTML. You're doing that somewhere else, right? CSS is just going to be your area where you can go in and design the thing. Let's just say, for example, I wanted to have Nexion analytics in the center of this CSS box model, right? We have content, we have padding, we have border, and we have margin. So content allows us to move the item around within that space. You can put in the top left, middle, top right, bottom right, etc. The padding allows us to shift the entire item as well, breathing room inside the border, right? So we can shift it, so we can move the entire text a little bit to the right, left, up, down, whatever it may be. Border is just that, simply a border, right? So you can change that line construct as well. You can also round the border if you want to. And then margin is going to allow you to change the space outside the border and pushes other things away. So if you have too many cards that are close to each other, you can create more space and you can create uniformity in that manner too. And that's how you see all these cards being so symmetrical when it comes to web design as well, because they have margins set up specifically to how many cards you want to introduce in a vertical or horizontal format, and they're all just lined up perfectly. So that's how the box model kind of works. And I'll show you videos on how to do that later as well. Okay, the next thing you have is block versus inline. So blocks allow you to have stacked vertical containers that you can display items in that manner. You also have inline as well, to where you can put things side by side, just like I was talking about for those cards, right? So that's just a way to take up as much width as much as possible is through inline, and then block is going to be that vertical space that you're taking up as well. So when you're using a web design format, you probably want to use inline and then a combination of block. And then when you're using mobile app design, you would probably want to do block. Now, let's just take it one step further, and this is where Flexbox comes in. This is where containers come in, and this is the entire design schema that you can kind of have within your website too. So we have row, we have column. You can align items the way you want it to as well. You can justify content and place it in an exact location on the website. You can align it to the top or the center. You can make spaces between if you want to as well. And then you can have a space in between containers as well. So you can just have, like, say, for example, a logo. So if you have a menu on top, then your logo comes in and then the rest of your content, that's also possible as well. So there's so many different variations with this, right? This is what you can do within CSS to just really take so much of the capability that it has and just arrange your blocks of code and place them wherever you want and associate them to a different container. All right, so responsive design is also important too. So websites have to be flexible enough to where as they're being coded, they're agile so that they can be delivered in tablets or phones as well. So any mobile device, right? And that's where the @ media format kind of comes in, because now you're specifying, hey, this is what I want to do with this block of code that I made. So even though I made the dot container block, now I'm going to say, hey, at media, you're going to do this instead of what you did for a website. So at media allows you to do that. All right, so button styling. So this one's pretty cool, right? So we can do .btn, and you can call these actually anything you want. It does not matter. So yes, there's a certain way you should probably do it just so it makes sense. It's easy to read, right? But you don't necessarily have to call it btn. You can spell out button all the way if you want to as well. Does not matter. It's up to you, right? So find out what works for you, find out what works for your organization, and then do it that way. Here we have background. So this is going to specify the exact background color of what we want. The color black is going to be the color of the font. The padding is to be 12 and 24. So this can give you that vertical and horizontal padding. The border radius is going to be 4. So that's going to give you rounded borders. And then the border is going to be none as well. So that's where you get the full design of that button. Now the text doesn't come in here. I'll be dropping a follow-on video for TypeScript so you can see exactly how text is introduced with the combination of CSS as well, because they go hand in hand, right? This is the body of that shape that you're looking at now. Okay, so here we have cards. So I know we talked about it before, right? So let's just say you're scrolling through a website like Amazon, or you're searching for something, you're trying to purchase something, and you see these cards. You always see cards, right? You see the image of what the product is, you see a little description, you see the add to cart or buy now option. These are all built on CSS, okay? So you have the margins as well, because now you have different cards next to each other. So you can see multiple items on one website or one mobile application. This is where CSS really comes into play, right? Because now you can build the exact shape that you want. You can customize the font style. You can have a shape behind the buy now if you want. So there's an endless amount of options, right? So every single website that you really see out there has CSS in it. So cards are going to be the building blocks for user interfaces in the modern era, simply because it's quick, it's efficient, and it gets you the product description and the look of it quickly so that you can make your decisions faster, right? All right, so these are a few resources that you can use to learn about CSS even more. I use W3 Schools quite a lot because it allows me to see things in action too. So I can go in there and be like, okay, try to find exactly what I'm searching for, find it, and I could see what it looks like before I even start coding it. And then I can apply that if I want to as well. All right, so with that said, I know I said the word container quite a lot, and I will cover that in an upcoming video for TypeScript, and we're going to talk about parent and child hierarchies. And that's going to break down all the container understanding so that you can leave the video having a comprehensive understanding of TypeScript, and also how hierarchies work and how CSS gets rolled into TypeScript as well. And with that said, thanks for watching, y'all.